Hey everybody, I am back with a discussion video that I really wanted to talk about for a good few minutes. A good few minutes. Probably since uh, Arcane Season 2 kind of wrapped up, which Season 2 isn't as good as the first one, but it was still relatively solid. And, I've been wanting to talk about like this misconstrued take on people's ire when it comes to woke content that we've been inundated with in the past handful of years at this point. Let's be honest. But before I continue, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. If you want to further support the channel, please follow my YouTube channel and my Patreon. If you want to if you want to fully subscribe, please follow me in the links in the description below. Now, to just be generous here, I'm sure that when DEI first came about, I'm sure it came from a very pure place. I'm willing to give that bit of an olive branch. But the problem, and I think a lot of people's problems, sure, there might be a few bigots here and there, but by and large, you have to agree there has been some forced agenda and forced whatever in our content, whether it's video games, TV, or movies, or even comics, where it's just like almost like a mandate to include things just to show like we're allies, or it's not organic. That's to say, none of it seems organic. Clearly, there's some higher ups that just give this kind of go ahead because it just looks good on paper, and it just don't want to be boycotted because it doesn't have the proper amount of females to a particular show, and it just feels so hollow. It's a hollow show of representation. And I wanted to pull up some slides just to show you, certain content that shows good representation and those that clearly is forced. And the main reason I wanted to talk about this, because like something like Arcane, I say, is a good example of representation, because definitely like a female kind of led show, because there's a lot of females in like power in this show. But unlike most shows with it, like with the whole force is female kind of rhetoric, they don't have to go so hard about that. They just let the show be. If it's written well, and that's the key thing, these shows and movies and games has to be written well, irregardless of the gender or whatever ideology. It's just is this something that people in a wide scope of things can follow along. It's kind of like something like Black Panther. Only a certain amount of people in the world are black, but people gravitate towards the movie and the story because it's a well-crafted story and a well-beloved character with layers to them. There isn't just, oh, he's black and that's all there is to him, and you should just like him because he's black. And if you don't like him, oh, you must be racist. That isn't good enough. And that's the problem with most of Hollywood and certain studios. It's like, oh, it's female, yeah, like put a female in it. And it's like, that shows like we're pro female. We gotta have like female directors, females writers, like are they qualified though? Don't just throw women in there. They're like, oh, it's gonna solve all your problems and it looks good. It is. And when people say that, you call it like, oh, they're misogynist because they you don't really care. It's like, oh, you're not supporting women and stuff like that. I support women if they are competent, if they, bring in good quality stuff. Sure, I would love to see, women succeed. Sure, but not just because they have a vagina. It's because they are competent and worked hard to get to a certain point in life. Let me get ready. Get these slides ready. Okay, I want to show off a couple of slides that shows like kind of like stuff that is like, okay, this is kind of crap, you know way of trying to represent women in certain contexts. It's like, so, or just people of a certain community. Now, see, we got, first and foremost, Acolyte. Now, if you've been paying attention to like the press tours leading up to the show's pilot, it's been very heavy-handed in what they're trying to promote this thing instead of just letting it be. Because sure, there will be some naysayers, and yeah, there are bigots out there in the world. Nobody's ignoring that fact, but it's smaller of a community than you think. And more often than not, there's people just offering legit criticism of the product you put out there. Fair use to be criticized, no matter what. And you lead it in. Clearly, this isn't Star Wars. Not by a long shot. You could. Leslie Hanlon clearly wanted to make something else, probably like some kind of lesbian story. I'm not sure, and then slapped a Star Wars product on it just to get it greenlit. Lesbian space witches, yeah. Uh, if you're talking about like press stories about patriarchy, you're already losing most people. You gotta like focus on the fact that, okay, you want to tell a Star Wars story. What do you have that the general audience, not just a subsect of the audience, is going to like appeal to? I mean, sure, something like Barbie clearly is focused geared towards women, but by and large, everybody can watch it. My Little Pony geared towards little girls, but by and large, it's a good community of people who got into that kind of stuff because it appeals to, it's something that can appeal to everybody and not just a subsect or group, which is fine sometimes, but it doesn't help if you spend most of it trashing like the Jedi, trying to make them like scum of the earth, and then appealing towards the Sith, who are clearly good guys and clearly bad guys. And sure, if you want to make sure there's like, I think the Clone Wars series kind of handled it better, where it's showing that yeah, the Jedi has flaws, but they're still the good guys. And this show is kind of ripping all that we know about Star Wars in like turn up into confetti because of some kind of power trip. And doesn't help if you got actors outside of this, pissing on the fans and calling on right wingers because they dare to criticize a product you put out that they general audience thinks is bad. This goes to show that just because you have Star Wars logo on it doesn't mean that we're supposed to clap like seals and like applaud and like, yeah, gobble it up like blah 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 blah. It's like, no. People in general want good content. You didn't give good content. You just hope like, oh, you're trying to hide behind the fact that, oh, if they hate it, they must hate females. We can use that as a shield so that we can avoid any type of responsibility in regards of putting out a bad product. I was like, no, you don't get to use women as a shield or people of color as a shield just because, like, oh, you're impervious of criticism. No, you made a bad product and you dare use females as like a shield to block any criticism. No, you can't do that. And people calling you out on it. And it helps you have like a more appealing lead. Sure, we have plenty of female-led content over the years. And this whole DEI thing, sure, like you want, from the purest sense, I can put it, you want, certain people of certain demographics that couldn't get through the doors because of some kind of gatekeeping that was in certain circles. But it's one thing to make sure they get through the door. There's a whole nother ball of wax if when they get through those doors, some of those people in those demographics are taking over. That means that nobody get to say that's not somebody of color. Well, let's just call it like a spade a spade. If you're a white straight male, you don't get a say, apparently. You get looked over, you get, pushed to the side because it's our time now. It's, that kind of attitude instead of just working harmoniously with each other. Fact of the matter is, they have a voice too. They need to be put in that table. Nobody should be overpowering one another. And that's where people kind of get annoyed with DI because it gotten to the point where it's not just letting people through the doors, it's allowing certain people who probably half of them, being generous, are not really qualified or at least taking the proper steps to reach a certain point to be worthy to be in like a showrunner or in a high position in a writer's room or whatever. It's utter nonsense. Then you go to like video games. Plenty of video games have been like inundated with DEI crap. Concord has been one of the worst games been put out in a long time. I would say just about as much as like Outlaws, but I don't know. It's one thing I give Outlaws isn't Concord at the very least. But Concord is just, if you look at the roster, it's just like, not only is this a bad game in general, it's a crappily done game, but the problem is a lot of these writers, developers, or whomever behind the scenes prioritize making sure like, oh, like we need paraplegic in here, we need a Native American in here, we need a person who doesn't fit the hourglass female figure to show, because there's people need to be seen. We need to be, people who like are overweight need to be seen, or people not fit the, certain, traditional appealing look need to be seen and heard and all this other stuff. And it's like, you can clearly see they're overdoing it a bit, and I blame them. They overplayed their hand. And instead of just taking baby steps with this, not saying like nobody wants progress, but you're trying to skip steps, and you're forcing change rather than just happening naturally, which is a slow process, and that is a big issue. people in general don't react well to rapid change, where they know things certain ways. It's kind of like, look at like cigarettes. Cigarettes, over from prior to the 90s, let's say, or no, say like prior to maybe the 2000s. There's been like smoking sections in certain restaurants, even on the planes back in the day. There's a group of people that smoked, and there was like places for them to smoke. They usually smoke indoors a lot. There's like a smoking section in certain places, but little by little, advertisements and like these dare programs have to inform people about the dangers of cigarette smoking and things of that sort. They didn't just like have a video game where people get chastised or have to be forced to do push-ups or pulling a bar for whatever every time they see somebody smoking, and just kind of lectures them about smoking. They just have a full little by little, every once in a while, put in like a thing about smoking, the dangers of smoking, here and there under the blue moon. They didn't have to do a mandate that every TV show has to have like a non-smoking, or somebody who smokes get chastised, or the beloved character or the father figure smokes and then has like a 20-minute lecture by their teenage daughter about the dangers of smoking or anything like that. It's just, like I said, it's a slow buildup. Eventually, we gotten around to the point where there's still people who smoke, but we don't really have smoking sections like that anymore. Definitely don't smoke on planes anymore. And people who smoke, they're still out there, but they, like go places like outside to smoke, so that way it doesn't bother anybody. It's just, and they're cool with it. They didn't like offer any pushback. There wasn't no like, bickering amongst people when it comes to these kind of things. That's how I kind of attribute it to the DEI thing. It's not necessarily like a bad thing with progress. And if you want to show certain people who fit certain demographics, that's fine. But if you treat everything like a college campus, where you got to have everybody under the blue moon popping up on a show, because that's what happened with Acolyte, in one particular episode, I think the third episode, where I'm just couldn't help but notice, like, I'm literally seeing every freaking race under the blue moon popping up in this one episode. Like, my God. And this Concord thing is just like, if you pull up the roster, it's just like, who are these people? And they dress stupidly, and they look goofy as hell, and not in a fun way. That's why people are praising Marvel Rivals, because we want to see hot people. People in general like looking at good-looking people for various reasons. It's not something to shame another person. It's something that's kind of like things to strive for half the time. And if you're overweight, it's probably a good idea to diet or exercise a little bit, because that's how people aren't naturally supposed to be. But some are for whatever reason. But you have to understand that, sure, people like thick women, but there's a difference between thick and fat. You understand? You're trying to make sure, like, you want to appeal to everybody, and in that grand scheme of things, you end up appealing to nobody, except for me, that small section of people that doesn't make up the grand scheme of the audience. And they definitely need to dial it back a bit, because now there's going to be like a pendulum swing the other direction, so that way we can try to get back to a balance here. Sure, and it comes in waves. Sure, there's certain women who are more curvy than others that are sexually appealing still, but back in the '80s, it was like a thing where skinny women was all the rage. Then in the '90s, a little thicker women was all the rage. But that's just the you know primary things that people find sexually arousing. But when you get to the point where you are a 400-pound woman on a Victoria's Secret thing, that's when people are kind of like, oh, roll their eyes. You get that you can't blame them to have that natural ick and knee-jerk negative reaction, because we've been force-fed this crap for a good handful of years, and most of the audience are kind of done with it. It's kind of gone overboard. You overplayed your hand, and now people are fighting back, and you got nobody to blame but yourself. I'm sorry. And you got back to like the movies here. You got Strange New World, and you can't. I can't. Even people who claim they like it, you can barely remember any of these people. They're hollow constructs of what you think people should be. It's like you gotta, I gotta pull this up. It's like I know the son is gay, but you got a paraplegic dog, and then a very masculine woman, and a very beta dad. It's just everybody's like all of a person of color. There's not one white guy there. It's like, oh my god, really? It's like it's like a ultra feminist liberal's wet dream. It's like nobody can remember who these people are, let alone what's their motivations or what the story are about. At the best I can remember is something like a remake or a rehash or a story of the Journey to the Center of the Earth kind of situation. And it is just like, who are you appealing to? And that's the main thing here that I find kind of annoying, is the fact that you're putting like representation first before you do with it in a story. That's one of the other major issues with Acolyte. You seem to have, made the crux of the story like third or fourth of your responsibility, above making sure like you check box every type of demographic to be put onto this project. For what? Look, most people love Black Panther movie. I don't think there's any Asian person that's going to be crying. Or was not Asian? It is like they did go to China because you got to appeal to the Chinese market. But I don't think there's, let's say, Native American. I don't think there's any Native American is crying that, oh, there's no Native American representation in our Black Panther movie. That's the thing. Not everybody needs to be seen. Not everybody needs to be shown in every little thing known to man that is put out to the world. And that is like a big error here. But I want to start showing like some good examples of like representation, because the smart writers behind this and smart directors. I want to say like not every director is an idiot, but I'm just saying they know how to do their freaking jobs. 1 second. Like I said, we got like Arcane here, where yes, primarily is a female-led story, and a few of them are in like, bisexual or lesbian relationships. But here's the thing: they aren't just about that. That's not their primary, character trait. You look at someone like, Vi and Jinx, sisters, who had like a falling out over a misunderstanding that drove one girl crazy and the other one kind of like, to drinking and, beating people up just to get, out her emotions and, just to feel something. And then you got like, people in the higher ups and these government officials with their various different motivations, dealing with certain criminality in the lower commons, and dealing with this mystical mysticism blue thing. I forgot what it's called, but this is how you do it. And people, even those who claim to be incels or just bigots or whatever like that, even those who you claim, they generally enjoyed the Arcane series because it's written well, the animation is spectacular, the musical score is on point, and there's motivations, there's goals, there's layers to these characters that makes them appealing. Even the villain, who by and large we understand, whether or not we agree with what he does. But if certain other people who have it their way, they would have like Vi making out with every woman there, and like having Jinx, rallying people to talk about taking down the patriarchy or something like that. Very cliche things at this point. And having like the main bad guy be some type of nerdy incel that's, hates women or something like that. It's just, no. That is, at this point in time, is very lazy. And that is an issue. And I think it probably helps that most of these things are, done by not Western developers, but more, people over in the East somewhere. Most of them. But it has smart writing. And you have a good sample of people of color too. And it isn't just about their color. That you don't have the black woman in the government who has like an issue with her mom talking about discussions about race, or like, hey, like you don't know how hard it is to struggle with us looking the way we do kind of attitude. Like, no. Sometimes there's room for that in certain things, in certain movies, if that is the crux of the backdrop. But things like this is not needed. You don't need to hand fist certain dialogue like that in this stuff, because it kind of turns people off. We don't need that because it comes across as preachy. We understand certain struggles that certain demographics have, but if the story doesn't require it, if it's not the backdrop of it, don't put it in. Agatha all along. Now, I give this a slight pass because I like, at least it's not Acolyte. Acolyte was really bothered me. It was so bad. It is insane. But this, that I probably will never go back to this, but at least I want to check it out. It's definitely made for like wine moms. Let's be honest. But at the very least, there are clear goals in mind with these people. There's layers to these people. Now, there's certain things that, like, I made like a review about this show up on my YouTube channel, so you can check out my full-on review of what I thought about this show. Because I did take notes down because I had a lot to say about this. But at the very least, I love the atmosphere to it. There's clear goals. There's certain women in this show are very charming. Uh, it wasn't hacky. Now, some people might disagree. Some people just, it's not going to work for them. And that's perfectly fine. It's legit. You don't need to try to ruin their YouTube career by, Twitter fingers and saying like, oh, they hate women. Like, no, it didn't appeal to them. And it is made for wine moms. It's not something that most people will gravitate to. But at the very least, there's motivations. It isn't just about who they are. Like, it's not just because they have a gay kid. They didn't really harp on it. Whatever. You look at his bedroom. I'm pretty sure there's like a couple of like pride flags waved around. Can't help that sometimes. But he didn't make his sexuality his entire identity. He clearly has motivations of looking for his brother and learning a bit about his mom. Okay? And where he comes from. That's, at least a legit motivation that everybody can gravitate to. Now everybody can gravitate towards like, oh, you don't understand how it feels to be gay in this, patriarchal or bigoted America and blah, blah, blah. It's annoying. Give something, these characters to achieve. Something that's universal in a way. So I give Agatha all along credit for that because there's some competent writers that, want to make some kind of show that's different from and that's appealing to people. We go into video games here. Now, Overwatch 2, I mentioned about Marvel Rivals, but Overwatch 2, you talking about like proper representation? This game is, at least off the top of my head, the epitome of representation. Because we look at this roster, it has somebody of almost every nation, and is done with in good faith. They're not stereotypes. They're not one note. And they're well crafted from the ground up. Each time they bring out one person at a time, and they give them layers to them and making it unique and appealing. You got somebody from Germany, somebody from London, Norwegian, Korean, Brazilian, Cuban, American. It's like African. You got like a wide range of people from different demographics and voice actors from those respective countries to voice act to give the voices authenticity. Like Widowmaker is French. You got a French-speaking woman to voice act to give, so you can have that accent really flow. So yeah, you can do this right, but you got to do it in good faith, and you have some competent writers and developers behind this, so that way it's appealing. And not too long ago they included at least a couple of them characters recently are gay, but it isn't like cartoonish or so in your face like they don't have like the gay Asian guy, I forgot his name, Lightweaver or something like that. He ain't, immediately come out drenched in the pride flag. Okay? Because gay people are just normal people. They're just everyday people. Their entire, anytime you introduce, somebody like that, doesn't need to be like a struggle with, their sexuality or anything like that. They can just live their freaking lives and just be. And you don't need to have them all sashaying and being like a stereotype either. Shogun, earlier this year, like Black Panther, is a predominantly Japanese story. Pretty much like a, Japanese Game of Thrones almost. And very few white people involved. There is some, but they don't need to make sure they include like somebody black or Native American um, or whatever that doesn't belong there. It makes sense because they have a few white people there because the story is being told during a time when um, uh, Europeans and the Spanish were start to intermingle a bit. So it makes sense for a few select white people being there for the story, but they ain't taking over. Is primarily 90 to 95% Japanese cast, and you have a good story, and you follow along in political intrigue and all the other stuff, and each character has their own motivations. It's a good variety of cast members that's doing an impeccable job with the show. Don't shove needless things in a product that doesn't require it. I don't require somebody black to be in this show just so I can feel seen. Doesn't require it. Don't need it. I don't know why, if there's any black person there who dare utter the words that they need to have a black person in this cast. I don't understand why. It's not made for some. It's made for a wide variety of audience. If you are intrigued by it and want to watch it, it's perfectly fine. Check it out. But if you don't have any kind of interest in it, then you don't have to watch it. But don't go around telling like it'd be more appealing if there's more people of color involved, like a black person, and like I need a Jewish person in there. It's like, no, it's not. This ain't the kind of show. So, stop, crying for something that of a product that doesn't require it. X-Men 97. Now, this is a good show. Not only coming back after all these years, but it's made for representation of people from a variety of demographics. But aside from maybe one or two scenes, primarily they ain't too focused on making sure that well, I would say they making sure like everybody, it's about the X-Men. It's pretty much about mutants. Now, mutants can fit whatever demographic they represent, any kind of demographic that feels marginalized. Sure. I still don't agree that we need to have more to be non-binary because that wasn't the word on people's lips at that time, so it kind of feels out of place to me personally, but I'm not going to trip too really much on that stuff. But it's a good example of representation, and it isn't ham-fisted for the most part. And it's still an X-Men story. They deal with, mutant-hating groups and things of that sort. Everybody gets time to shine. Nobody's overlooking one another. And, you don't have, like, Storm getting into Rogue's face about, you don't know what it's like to be a black woman in America, and I have to move and leave everything behind. And I ain't trying to deal with patriarchal Charles and pushing me. None of that crap. Everybody respects everybody. People like everybody here. They have their disagreements, but there's respect still there. It's just, all in all, it's done right. And sure, some might say like, oh, this is only more recent stuff. No. We always had representation in media before. We just never had to put it out on Front Street. We just let it be. Like, for example, the first Ghostbusters movie introduced Ernie Hudson to a wide variety of people. And he's just like an everyday dude, just like everybody else on this team. And he was charming and funny, and he jived well with, the other three castmates. And he's just like a smooth dude. He wasn't no kind of caricature uh, and he wasn't dumb. He was kind of like your everyday laborer, while the others were like scientists. But they treated him like an equal. They just treat him like a person. Okay. Oh, you just you want to hire? You will get hired? Sure. Like come along. Sure. They didn't have to they didn't have to have Venkman get used to working with a black guy because of some kind of struggle. No, they didn't have to do all that stuff. Didn't require it. Doesn't need it. We've done this before. It was accepted. Even another movie Ernie Hudson was in, Congo, where him and the female on that little crew, Congo's in like late 90s kind of film, but I remember it being relatively fun. But him and his woman, I forgot her name, great actress, I do know that, primarily is ones that stick their neck out to protect the group from like dangerous apes and other antagonists and whatnot. They step up. They didn't have to make a big show of it. Like, look, first female and black male lead, blah, blah, blah. They didn't have to, make a big show of it. Just let it be. If anybody go off and, it would help. Like, if you have written a coherent story with people with proper motivations and layers to the character and put it out there, anybody who was going to criticize them and they see something like that, quickly shuts them up. Shut them up through your story if you wrote it confidently. Can't talk. Is another one. A TV show, In Living Color. Very diverse cast. Mostly black, but, you got like a good selection of, got a couple of white people. You got, J-Lo was one of the Fly Girls on that show. I'm pretty sure it was J-Lo. So it has like a good, selection of people of color, of various colors on that show. But they didn't have to, it made fun of everybody. It was in good faith too. People ribbing each other. Everybody, from what I understand from like, I think it was Tommy Davidson or Marlon Wayans put out like on Shannon Sharp's podcast that they still got handwritten letters of people who didn't like certain things, akin to like Twitter fingers, essentially, who people still get their fair share of gripes. But people back then had to put in the effort to actually mail a letter out to the studio about certain things they didn't care for. But by and large, people love In Living Color. And of course, you watch certain shows, certain episodes of In Living Color today to Gen Z, I'm pretty sure you'll get a lot of laughs, or at least people will be kind of shocked and clutching their pearls, because show them Handyman. I bet you they will be clutching their pearls. You cannot, they will have a heart attack, because most Gen Zs cannot handle it. That this little safe bubble, like, no, sometimes you don't get a safe bubble. You got to do the dozens. It'll toughen you up, get thicker skin. It helps you prepare for certain things in life, because life is hard sometimes. And nobody's obligated to be nice, or at least they treat you with respect, but nobody's obligated to make sure you're feeling comfortable in your little boundary, in your space. Sometimes you need to get poked a little bit, people, just like same way with South Park. Everybody gets a turn. It's all in good faith. We get to laugh at each other every once in a while. Even black people, get made fun of sometimes, and it should be all in good faith. It's all in good faith. And we all get to laugh at each other sometimes. Learn to laugh at yourself. It's relieving. And this was like examples that I want to show of people in the past, people in the present. Shows good examples of representation done organically. They weren't forced to hire Jim Carrey. Damon Wayans or Keenan Ivory Wayans saw Jim Carrey do some stand-up. thought it was really funny, wanted to bring on board, and catapulted Jim Carrey to the megastar he is today. Ernie Hudson wasn't like, hired because, they needed like somebody of color here to make sure it wasn't completely all white cast. He was, they wanted Eddie Murphy, but because like some kind of scheduling conflicts or something like that, they end up, hiring Ernie Hudson. Does an impressive job. Isn't just like, we need like a black guy. He was just really good at his job. And it's like, wow, this is really, this guy's really good, and he, jives well with everybody else. That's how you need to be done. Now people might argue, that's why we got DI, so we can always hire the people with the best jobs that have to be a person of color. And maybe sometimes, to be generous, I will give you guys, sometimes you probably do that. But other times, I'm sorry. I think we got enough patterns showing that reflects that, no, you probably just hired people because you needed like to appeal like certain check boxes. Because I think the Oscars are probably the biggest hold the biggest fault on this, because I'm pretty sure they're the ones that won't greenlit anybody to get nominated for certain awards, because that's how certain studios need to make sure that that stuff gets nominated later on. Like, we're telling some type of biopic, we need to make sure we got like a certain amount of women involved, otherwise they won't probably look at us, let alone nominate us. And that makes it the whole point of representation feel hollow. You don't really believe in that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure you're sympathetic, but I don't think you believe in that kind of stuff, because the only color that's important is green. And it's like, okay, we need to make sure our stuff gets to this point, but in order to do that, we need to have some kind of quota involved. Then it doesn't mean nothing. You making sure we care about black people and stuff like that. And no, you don't. I'm pretty sure you're sympathetic, but it's like you don't want to get boycotted. You don't want to get canceled. You don't want to get fired. That's why you do most of the stuff that you do. It doesn't mean nothing. Woke means nothing. And that's why people cringe at the word woke, because it's in a negative context now. Because I'm pretty sure it started off as a pure place, but then certain people took it over and then ran it to the ground. And every time somebody sees something like that in a particular TV show, you can't get mad at them because of their knee-jerk reaction, because we've been inundated with that stuff and it's obviously manufactured. So you calling them incels or bigots or whatever because they dare to point that out, you can't blame them. It's a knee-jerk reaction at this point in a bad way. It's like, you cringe until you prove us wrong. It's up to the writers to make sure that even if you have to put in a certain amount of women, make sure they're well-written. You got Sarah Connor's a good, perfect example of well-written character with multi-layers. When she started off in the first Terminator film, she wasn't already a badass from the jump. And she is like a mild-mannered waitress. But by the time we get to the second movie, clearly there's a gap in time where she, we saw, in the second film that she clearly met up with some people that taught her how to use a gun and train and all the stuff. She ends up teaching her son, who's going to be a leader to fight against the machines in the future. So she became a badass because she had to learn that stuff, even though it was probably done off screen. But given what we saw little by little in the second movie, clearly she spent most of her time training and preparing. And that's why she, she became like the most badass woman in pop culture history. She isn't you can never say Sarah Connor's a Mary Sue. Nobody ever would have said that, because she proven that she's not, because she worked to achieve something. She still struggles. And that's the thing, is just like you don't make these characters just hollow representations with no meat to the bone. But that's, pretty much the video that I wanted to talk about. I've been wanting to talk about this and get this off my chest because, you can't, point is, you can't blame people for getting a little annoyed with woke and DEI, because people behind all that stuff has ran it to the ground and abused that good faith label, because instead of using it generously and properly, you mishandle it, and now the cat's out of the bag and people are kind of annoyed with it. Now you can't get mad because people are pushing back against it. And now the pendulum has swung back the other direction, because now we need to get a proper balance. Sure, we want some females in certain video games or TV shows or what have you that isn't just a damsel in distress. But we also don't want no pantsuit wearing girl boss either. That's the polar opposite of what we want. You want like a multi-layered character that isn't just about her gender or who she has sex with. You got Princess Leia, Sarah Connor, Ahsoka, plenty of examples here. Don't know why you need to go off the rails with it or taking it too far in one direction. Anyway, that was also all I wanted to get off my chest, really. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Am I off base here? Or do you have your own unique take? Let me know, and I'll see you guys later on, as I'll be doing like a live stream of the Video Game Awards. So look forward to that, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.